Thank you so much for being here with us today. My name is Krisha Martell. I'm the Director of Student Recruitment on the high school outreach team at Questbridge, and you are joining us for what is the second of a three-part webinar series called Meet Our Colleges, where, well, you'll get to do just that. You'll learn more about some of our colleges and different aspects that make them distinct. Today's webinar is specifically on the open curriculum, and several of our college partners actually offer open curriculums, and we're lucky enough to be joined by admissions representatives from 3 such college partners. So if you ever wanted to know what an open curriculum is, or perhaps you just can't wait to experience it for yourself in college, you're in the right place today. I do have a couple of prepared questions for our panel, but we will encourage you to drop any questions you might have for our panelists in the Q&A box as we go along. Our panelists may actually be answering some of your questions, especially if they're specific to their institutions, as we are chatting out loud. And of course, I will ask your questions out loud to them as well. We do have a limited amount of time here today, so if we do not get to your question, or if we don't get through every single question and you still want to ask it of us, please email us at questions@questbridge.org, and the team usually gets back to you within 24 to 48 hours, so hopefully we'll answer your question then as well. But now, as we're getting started, I'd love to just turn it over to our panelists and have them introduce themselves and share a little bit about their college for everyone here. So as we introduce ourselves, I think we can just keep it a little orderly, do it in alphabetical order by college, and we'll start with Matthew.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Price. I'm Senior Associate Director of Admission here at Brown University. A little about Brown, of course, we have an open curriculum. That's why we're here today. We consider our students the architects of their own education. Just a little bit of background. Brown was founded in 1764. We're the 7th oldest college in the United States and the 3rd oldest college in New England. We are located in Providence, Rhode Island. I saw a couple of Rhode Islanders in the chat, so go us. We're currently enjoying a very nice summer up here. So I'll pass it on to my colleague from Smith.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allie Levinson. I use she, her pronouns. I work at Smith College, which is in Northampton, Massachusetts. For those of you who don't know, that's in Western Massachusetts, about 2 hours west of Boston. We are a gender-inclusive women's college, so founded to educate women. And we also have an open curriculum. We're also one of the only women's colleges that offers an ABET accredited engineering program. So that's another fun fact.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sebastian St. Ivory. I'm an Assistant Dean of Admission at Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut. Similar to my friends and colleagues here, we offer an open curriculum, but we are also a liberal arts university, which differentiates us from many of our peer institutions, that we offer a bit more opportunities in the research space than many of our peers do, but great education. Middletown, Connecticut is a wonderful place to live and to go to school, and I'm so glad to be with all of you today.
Well, thank you for that. I would love to just start off with sort of a soft question here. If we could help define for our audience what an open curriculum is and what it might look like at your individual institution. And we'll go backwards here and go with Sebastian.
So an open curriculum at Wesleyan, how I look at it, is the flexibility to choose courses you're passionate about and excited about without having a curriculum subscribed to you. Your education should be as unique as you are at the end of the day. So Wesleyan offers about 900 courses each academic year, and there's no graduation requirements besides taking a set number of credits, in this case 32, and picking a major. So other than that, no two Wesleyan students navigate their Wesleyan education in exactly the same way. You're taking small classes like you would at any liberal arts institution, but you're in those classes with students who are excited and passionate about the classes they're in, instead of students who are just in those classes to check a box for graduation. So really, that's how I look at the open curriculum and how Wesleyan views the open curriculum.
you. And Alexandra, why don't we go with you?
I feel like you took a lot of my talking points here, Sebastian. So yeah, the way I normally explain it is that we have no core requirements or distribution requirements. And so in your high school, you're probably really used to being told what classes you need to take in order for graduation. But how it works similarly at Smith is that you do have to take a certain number of courses, you have to choose a major, but you're really free to take whatever you like. And I think that students really explore more because we don't force them to, because they have that freedom, that flexibility to take what really interests them and to be curious about the world around them without the pressure.
Matthew, what does this look like at Brown?
There are only so many ways to describe an open curriculum in general, but like my colleagues, at Brown, we don't have a core, we don't have distribution requirements. You do have to complete a concentration, which is our word for major. Each concentration does have a set number of classes that you have to take and pass in order to earn that specific degree, ranging from certain concentrations have 9 required courses, some concentrations have 22 required courses. But then outside of those concentration requirements, you can take whatever you want. One thing that I will point out, an open curriculum is not just wonderful for the students in the classes, it's also wonderful for the faculty who are teaching those classes. Because when faculty walk into those classes, they know that they're walking into a room full of students who all want to be there. So therefore, they're very appreciative of being in that environment. You get to build really great relationships with the faculty members who are teaching you.
It's a great thing to point out in terms of the benefits of the open curriculum from the teaching perspective. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about what other benefits students might find by attending a school that does have an open curriculum. And go ahead and go back to Alexandra if you want to kick us off.
Sure. So I'm sure there's lots of benefits that we'll all touch on. I think one of them is an open curriculum can be really valuable if you don't quite know what you want to do yet. Many students go in, even if you have an idea of what you might want to study, you really haven't had the chance to try everything yet. And so an open curriculum gives you a lot of flexibility because there are fewer graduation requirements. To try new things, to figure out what your real passion is. And if you have multiple passions, I know at least at Smith, it's very easy to double major. Many students, you might love both music and physics, and it's really possible to pursue multiple interests because of the open curriculum. So that's one of the big advantages, I think.
Bastion, what about at Wesleyan?
Yeah, I mean, I think that hits the nail on the head with regards to the pros of an open curriculum. I went to a school that had general education distribution requirements, and you did not see a lot of students really exploring very disparate things on campus. At Wesleyan, I would say the norm on campus is to have a major and a minor, or 2 majors, or a major and a certificate, even in 2 things that may not be thought to be like-minded. I feel like I'm just repeating back what Ali said, but I think that really is the highlight of the open curriculum, that you have that flexibility, that if you have different passions, those passions can come together to create a very interdisciplinary college experience.
I actually have a question here in the chat that asks a little bit about what it's like to double or second major at your schools, considering the open curriculum. How does that work? And what happens if classes don't have enough space for students due to popular demand? So 2 slightly different questions. What is it like to double and second major? Is it possible? And then what happens when there's high demand in classes? And we can start with Matthew here on this one.
Sure. So at Brown, about 25% of our students pursue more than one concentration. And when they are, if they choose to pursue more than one concentration, they get concentration advisors from both academic departments. And these concentration advisors work with you to make sure that you are fulfilling both sets of concentration requirements. Sometimes certain classes can count toward both sets of requirements, but you will be taking a broad range of classes through both academic departments. What was the second question? Oh, what happens if classes are full? At Brown, it is very rare for most classes to be full. There are some exceptions where classes are just like so popular. There is a waiting list or something like that for them. But it's very rare for a student at Brown to not be able to enroll in a class. And if they can't take it one particular semester, they'll probably get into it in the following semester. But if the class is capped at like 20 students and you're that 21st student and you keep showing up and you tell the professor, I really want to learn from you, I think you're great, odds are that you'll be allowed to join the class. The only classes that have a firm cap on them are first year seminars at Brown, and that is to kind of encourage that type of learning atmosphere in that really small setting. But other than that, you're going to be able to take classes at Brown.
Question, what about at Wesleyan in terms of double and second majors?
I'll break it down through a little bit of math here for those of you who enjoy math. You've got 32 credits in your educational journey at Wesleyan if you don't overload yourself. An average major at Wesleyan is going to put you between 9 credits on the small side to 13 credits on the large side. Let's say average it out to 11 credits. If you have 11 credits in one major, 11 credits in a second major, you still have 10 credits to do with what you want as you please before you graduate. So that flexibility is something that you don't see at schools that have general education requirements. And similar to Brown, yeah, we have some popular courses, and students who show up on a waiting list are often going to be allowed in the course through over enrollment. But there are also so many interesting courses offered each and every academic year at Wesleyan. And again, 900 courses. Students are always telling me every year, sure, there might be a course I can't get into, but there's 10 courses I want to take each semester, and I just go to the next best option. It's not like you're going to a course you aren't excited about. You'll just try and register for that course the next semester or a year from now.
Alexandra, what about at Smith?
Yeah, so at Smith, as I said, double majoring is very easy for the same reasons Sebastian did the math for us about courses. It works very similarly here. As far as getting into the courses you want, Smith is a small college. We're about 2,500 students. So classes do tend to be small. You might not always get into the exact seminar you want, but it is very possible and easy to fulfill your major requirements. Generally, they'll give you a range of classes that you can take. We're also part of a consortium, so there's always possibilities to take classes through the consortium schools as well.
You see a question here in the chat, in the Q&A box from Idalia, who wants to know a little bit more about proposing a new course. So perhaps, there's already so many offerings there, but what would happen if a student wants to propose a new course that's not currently being offered? And we can start with Alexandra.
This is a really interesting question that no one's ever asked me before. I don't know that we have a formal process for proposing a new course to be taught generally, but we do have a special studies program where if you want to take a course, you can self-design the curriculum along with a faculty advisor. Generally, that's a course just for you or a very small group. It would not be offered to the college at large. But if there's something you want to study that's not offered, we want to make it happen. We want you to be able to chart your own course. That's the open curriculum idea.
Does it seem similar, Matthew and Sebastian, at your institutions?
Yep. You can do that on your own through an independent study project or through a group independent study project with you and some friends.
Wesleyan is actually a little different here. Wesleyan offers something called Student Forum, where students are able to design a 4-credit course and teach that course. So if there's something you're passionate about and excited about, you can propose that course, develop a syllabus for it with the help and support of a faculty advisor. But ultimately, that course is run by a student for students. So you'll see a handful of forum courses pop up each year. There's almost always a farm forum, which deals with some of the issues with our on-campus farm. There was recently a forum dealing with issues in hip hop. And again, there's a handful of these offered every academic year at Wesleyan.
Also, options to both propose courses taught by professors as well as perhaps designing your own course that you teach. I'd love to hear a little bit about just in terms of, we're talking about a lot of flexibility, a lot of early courses being offered, courses being proposed, many options. I can imagine that for some students, especially if they're coming from high schools that have very structured curriculums, that this might be a little overwhelming. And so would love to hear a little bit more about the types of supports, the programming around helping students navigate the open curriculum on your campus. And we could go ahead and start with Matthew.
Sure. So at Brown, every student in their first year is paired with an academic advisor as well as a peer advisor. And you work with this advising team to not only navigate the academic offerings at Brown, but just getting acclimated to campus. And that's why that student advisor is so important to you. So you meet with your academic advisor at the beginning of the semester. You tell them about your interests and what you are particularly interested in taking that semester. And then you have shopping period the first 2 weeks of every semester where you can show up to any class, even if you haven't registered for it. And so by the end of that shopping period, you have 4 classes that you know you definitely want to be in because you have sampled those classes. So there is a lot of support formally, and then your peer advisor will give you more informal advice. They'll say things like, oh, you're looking at that class. Well, I took it 3 semesters ago. Here's the amount of work that was involved. I really like this class. You should definitely think about taking it. So we do offer all of the support. When you declare your concentration at the end of your sophomore year, you receive a concentration advisor. That person helps you navigate through your concentration. If you are pre-med, pre-law, pre-business, you would get additional advising for that. So again, so much support, but I do want to stress, especially in an open curriculum environment, we have all of these resources, but they're only as good as how much you use them. So especially at a place like Brown, where no one is going to laugh at you for asking for help, asking for support, it's expected of you as the architect for your own education to go out and seek that support.
Good reminder, yes. It's not enough to have the resources, but you also have to make sure you're using them. Alexandra, what does it look like for your institution?
We follow a very similar sort of playbook, although we don't have peer advisors. I like that idea. You're assigned a liberal arts advisor as you come to Smith. They will work with you until you declare your major by the end of your sophomore year, and then you'll have your major advisor. I feel like it's very nice to have these advisors, not just to, make sure you sign up for your classes, but they can help you balance your course load. I think sometimes first years come in and they try to do, they'll be like, I'll take 3 lab sciences all at once, my first semester. No, don't do that. Your advisor can make sure that you have a balanced course load, that you're prepared for the level of work, and that the type of learning you'll be doing in each class is balanced. And so I feel like that's something really important that people don't necessarily consider when they're choosing their classes.
Absolutely, some good knowledge there from folks who have seen other students go through the process. Sebastian, what about at your school?
I don't know if I can say it more eloquently than my colleagues did here. Wesleyan does have peer advisors, but very similar to Smith and Brown, a 3-tiered advising system. Peer advisors, liberal arts are lower division advisors for freshmen, and major advisors for upperclassmen once they declare in the spring of their sophomore year. And at the highest level, advising through the class dean structure, where each class has a class dean that might help navigate larger scale issues within the classroom.
Level advising and support for students at all 3 institutions. I am seeing a question here in the Q&A box from Ian, who wants to know a little bit more about the classes that are offered and whether there's certain classes that are locked into certain majors. So in other words, if he's not majoring in that particular discipline, can he still take classes in that field or discipline? And we could start with Sebastian.
Yeah, I mean, you can still definitely take courses even if you aren't majoring in that discipline. It's not saying that there are not priorities for students to get into some of those required major courses, and those courses that students need to take to fulfill to fulfill those major credit requirements. But if you are a physics major who has a passion for government, there's nothing saying you can't take a government course. There's nothing saying as a freshman or sophomore before you've declared a major, you can take upper level courses in those departments. But it's also saying that you're going to be further down the totem pole in those departments than those upper class students. And by the time you get to be a junior or senior, you're going to be much higher up on those totem poles and be given higher priorities to enroll in those major level courses, or those courses that might be more difficult to get to enroll in.
But at Smith.
At Smith, it's similar. It's a question of priority versus whether you're allowed to take a course. Some courses do give priorities to majors. Some might give priority to non-majors or first years, especially intro classes that are designed to sort of get you interested in a topic. So it's really going to depend on the class. Every class, when you sign up, will list who gets priority.
And Matthew?
If you are a physics concentrator and you want to take a religious studies course, they'll roll out the red carpet for you. They'll be excited to have you there. And that's really just the spirit of Brown and the spirit of the open curriculum. We want students, it's not just accepted, it's encouraged for students to explore outside of their area of interest.
Yeah, I can imagine how lively a conversation with that level of diversity and academic thought can end up being, right? If folks are not just limited to the majors that they're studying. I do see a question in the chat from Stephanie. She's saying specifically for Brown, how does the fail-pass grading system work with the open curriculum? But curious to hear from everyone on the panel if there are fail-pass systems at your schools, as she has mentioned, and how that works at your individual institutions. But we'll start with Matthew.
Right. So at Brown, it's called Satisfactory No Credit, or SNC. But for simplicity's sake, I'll call it pass-fail in this response. But what that was designed to do was it was to encourage those students to step outside their comfort zone and explore without the fear of the letter grade or fear of it or anxiety of the letter grade that they would receive. So for example, the example I gave earlier of if you are a physics concentrator and you want to take that religious studies class and it's your first religious studies class, you might want to think about taking that on the pass-fail basis so you can really concentrate on the work and the learning and the material rather than aiming for any particular grade. We don't calculate a GPA at Brown, so we taking a class pass-fail would not affect your GPA. You'd probably be encouraged to take all of your concentration courses for a letter grade so you can calculate your own GPA within the concentration. But what pass-fail was designed for was to really encourage you to step outside that comfort zone and diversify your education on your own.
Sebastian?
I think very similar remark there, given my experiences at Wesleyan. I think departments encourage students to take explorative courses pass-fail. It's about more than the grade. It's about the growth process through the classroom. And I really think that culture exists at Wesleyan, where students are more interested in gaining critical thought and studying something they're passionate about instead of the letter grade at the end of the semester. So having pass-fail courses available for students to take is a great resource. I'm not sure about limitations at other institutions. I believe at Wesleyan you are only allowed to take one pass-fail course per term. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that is correct.
Alexandra?
Yeah, we do have limits at Smith. It's a maximum of 16 credits, which I think is usually about 4 courses during your time at Smith can be taken like in our pass-fail equivalent. I don't think it's a super popular option for Smithies because they tend to want to have grades, but it is an option there if you want it. Or if you're trying something that's really outside of your comfort zone, we want you to do that. We want you to try things, even if you're a little bit scared, just because you really want to learn. And so it is an option that we offer.
So all 3 offering pass-fail classes and in different ways, right? So a little a little different at each institution, regardless of whether it's afforded to students or not. I am seeing a question from Sam in the chat here that speaks a little bit more towards the definition of the open curriculum. So especially for those who may have joined us a little later after we had defined that up front, would love to answer this here. What's the difference between this style of open curriculum versus electives at another university? So for example, will I have the core subjects to be confident in that specialty and then have the open curriculum? So really trying to understand, if I have electives under a different curriculum, what's the difference between that and having a completely open one? And if we could just have one person perhaps take this on, Sebastian, since you're off mute, I will pass it to you.
So repeat that one more time. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so the real difference between having electives at a university that might have a more structured curriculum versus having a completely open curriculum.
I mean, it's the flexibility at the end of the day. I mean, you've got at all three of our institutions, depending on what you call it, you either have a major or a concentration. So imagine just pulling out those 10, 12, however many gen ed distributional requirements that you may have at another institution. The rest of your courses are either electives, they're going towards a second major, or a minor. So it's really that flexibility there. So at the end of the day, there isn't necessarily a significant difference. It's just what it's labeled as.
Alexandra and Matthew, anything you'd like to add to that?
I think to Sebastian's and Alexandra's earlier points, whereas in those gen ed classes, you're sitting alongside other students who are there because they have to be there. So the level of excitement is maybe a little different than replacing those 8 to 10 courses with courses where everyone in the classroom wants to be there.
A question here in the Q&A box as well about just wondering when students have to declare a major or concentration under the open schools. And Alexandra, you can get us started.
So at Smith, you have to declare at least one major by the end of your sophomore year. You can add another major later or change your major as long as you're still going to graduate on time. You can add minors, you can add what we call concentrations, which is a different thing. But generally speaking, they just want to make sure that by the end of your sophomore year, you have a solid plan for getting your major and graduating on time.
Bastian?
Sorry, same answer. By the end of your sophomore year, you need to have declared a major, and then you can change it at any point after that fact, add a second one, add a minor, et cetera, but second semester sophomore year is when you are going to declare in about 95% of cases.
Is it any different at Brown?
Just slightly. So we you do declare at the end of your sophomore year, second semester sophomore year. And you can change afterwards. You can add another concentration on afterwards, so long as you can graduate on time. But Brown does not offer minors.
A question about consortiums and dual degree programs and whether these are offered at your schools and if anyone can participate in them. So, slight variation from the open curriculum, but still having to do with what they can study. We can go ahead and start with Matthew.
Yeah, we have one partner in terms of that for both answers, and that's RISD, the Rhode Island School of Design. RISD is right across the street from us, and I will be bold and say it's the best design school in the country. And so we do offer a dual degree program with RISD. Students must apply to and be accepted to that program out of high school. It is a 5-year program. You spend your first year pretty much full-time at RISD, second year pretty much full-time at Brown, and then years 3 through 5 are a combination of both schools. At the end of all of that, you graduate with a Bachelor of Fine Arts from RISD and a Bachelor of Arts from Brown. It is a small program. There are about 20 students in it each year, but they are on both of our campuses and doing some really, really great things. Now, in terms of consortium, If you are a Brown student and you are not part of the Brown RISD dual degree program, but you want to take some classes at RISD, if you, I believe it's Visual Art 100, if you take and pass that at Brown, you're then eligible to take up to 4 classes at RISD during your time at Brown.
Alexandra?
So Smith is part of the 5-college consortium here in Western Mass. So we're partners with Amherst College, Hampshire College, Mount Holyoke College, and the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. So you can take classes for free, up to 2 per semester, which is half of your classes if you really wanted to. You don't graduate with a dual degree. You're always going to be a Smith student and get a Smith degree, but you can take classes there. It's a really great opportunity to expand, academically. There's over 7,000 courses, and we only have 1,000 on our home campus only. So that's really great. We also offer some certificate programs, which are similar to minors, but involve professors and courses from across the 5 colleges. Really great to look into.
Bastian, are there any dual degree or consortium type partnerships?
No consortium with Wesleyan, but we do offer 3+2 programs for engineering with Caltech, Dartmouth, and Columbia. So an opportunity for students to get a bachelor's degree in a liberal arts discipline from Wesleyan, and then get a bachelor's of engineering from one of those other 3 institutions.
I see a question here in the Q&A from Olnea. What does the process for transferring dual enrollment college credits look like at each of your institutions? So do you accept dual enrollment coming out of high school, or what does that process look like? And Sebastian, if you could kick us off.
Sure. So at Wesleyan, it's simple. We are not going to accept more than 2 pre-matriculation credits, whether they're IB, AP, dual enrollment, any other option that you have. Usually in the case of an AP course, we're looking for 4s and 5s. In the case of IB, we're looking for 6 and 7. For dual enrollment, we're looking for courses that meet or exceed the rigor of Wesleyan courses. Again, students are able to pick and choose what they'd like to take and what they'd like to bring in with them, but each of those regulations are set on a department by department basis. So it's tough to say a one-size-fits-all policy, but that's kind of painting with a broad brush stroke.
Pretty much the same policy at Brown. And even if we were to accept any of the AP, IB, or dual enrollment credits, it would most likely be for placement rather than credit toward graduation. Some departments would award like an unassigned credit. But I'll tell you something that I think is true for all 3 of our institutions. A lot of students who come to these schools who are in the position to place out of these intro classes look and see who is actually teaching these intro classes, and they see how brilliant that faculty member is teaching first-year students, and they opt to take that intro class anyway because they want to learn from that person.
Sandra, anything to add?
We use them similarly. You can use them to place out of a class, depending on your results. The other way Smith does it is as recovery credit. So say you're a sophomore at Smith, you have to drop a class due to medical reasons or something like that. We allow, in some cases, for AP, IB, or dual enrollment credits to make up and allow you to graduate on time.
Now we've been kind of in the weeds of talking about curriculums and majors, and I'd love to kind of remind us of what's ultimately coming out of the experience of going to college, right? Eventually students are bound to graduate, right? And would love to hear from each of you, what can a open curriculum really help prepare students for in terms of their careers and their life after college? What is that benefit of the open curriculum versus a more standard core curriculum? If we probably get started with Matthew and then work our way around.
Yeah, so I think 2 things. One is, the beauty of just a liberal arts education in general means that you don't have to major or concentrate in what you're going to become. And you just learn things from, you just learn so many different things so that you are prepared to think about problems and issues and solutions from all different angles and standpoints. And doing that in an open curriculum, having even the increased flexibility to explore and learn inside and outside of your comfort zone really does prepare you intellectually for careers. But also practically, you are owning your education. It's empowering, and it gives you just the skills to manage your own education, so you can take those management skills into your career once you graduate.
Sandra, what about it, Smith?
I love that answer. I also think that what you learn in classes is not maybe as different as you think. In pretty much every class you take at Smith, you're going to be learning, how to do research in different fields, how to write, how to think critically, how to speak in public, work with your peers. Like, no matter what the content of the course is, those are subjects you're going to be exploring throughout your education. And so I think the beauty of the open curriculum is you're really building those skills interdisciplinary, learning, thinking about how they apply to different worldviews, to different experiences. And then no matter what you go on to do, you'll still have those skills that you built in all the different courses that you took.
I think echoing my colleagues, when I'm talking about this through a Wesleyan context, I tell students that regardless of where you go to school, you should develop 3 skills. You should learn how to think critically, you should learn how to write effectively, and you should learn how to develop relationships well. If you can do those 3 things well, it doesn't matter what your plans are for life after college. I think that an open curriculum and this flexibility that you get at all 3 of these institutions, taking courses you want to take instead of courses that you have to take, really are going to drive you towards those 3 skills. Every student here today is part of Generation Z. The average Gen Z student will have 4 distinct careers and an average of 12 jobs between the time they graduate college and the time they retire. For the rising seniors, you'll graduate college hopefully in the year 2028 and will likely be in the workforce until about 2073. The skills that you need today aren't necessarily the skills that you need 50 years from now. Yet I think the skills that do stand the test of time are the skills that you're going to be developing through these classes, through the open curriculum, because you want to be there.
Well, yes, I'm hearing themes of, not just the content that's being learned, the skills from the actual, disciplines or subject matter, but those soft skills that students are learning as they are architects of their own education and are building themselves up and making those relationships across campus. Just in the same vein of sort of thinking ahead of, what comes after college, would love to hear from all 3 of you sort of what the alumni community sort of is for students, right? Coming out of your individual schools. And we could start backwards here with Sebastian.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small, intimate, liberal arts environment. I've found that Wesleyan students are really willing to go to bat for their alumni community. They're willing to support each other. And that really is fundamental, I think, not just to our institution, but the ethos of many small institutions where you're looking at an alumni network that is tens of thousands of people, not hundreds of thousands of people. So the relationships that exist in this community aren't segmented just by communities at Wesleyan, but really the entire Wesleyan network. That if you think about some large colleges and universities in the country, you aren't necessarily going to feel the same ties to your alumni network in its entirety, but to specific communities within the alumni network. At Wesleyan, I found alums really have a commitment to the entirety of the alumni network in a way that I think is really admirable in this community.
How is the alumni community at Smith?
The Smith Alumni Network is very tight knit. We say we have over 50,000 alums, which again, in number is smaller than a lot of larger institutions, but they're very close. They have regionally based clubs depending on where you live. You might get outreach from one if you apply to Smith. And they meet up regularly. They go for brunches, they go for hikes. They have Facebook pages to connect. And they're really there to support current Smith students, both professionally and personally. You know, if you need a place to stay while you're in a town for an interview, they will hook you up with a guest room. If you need networking advice or looking for an internship, they're also there to help you with that.
Yeah, so at Brown, there are well over 100,000 Brown alumni across the country and around the world. We work with them through our career lab for internship support, for summer internships, as well as career support once you graduate from Brown. If there's one thing that is true about Brown alumni, it's that Brown alumni love talking about Brown. So they will always be willing to connect with seniors and those who have recently graduated. The alumni network is really strong.
Thank you for thinking ahead with me as to what happens after students graduate from your institutions. I'm seeing a question in the Q&A from Mariah, who is thinking more present day right now. What advice would you give to high school students to prepare for the rigorous academia of college life? And we can go ahead and start with Matthew.
Wow, yeah. I mean, just take your studies seriously and complete your work, trust your teachers, trust your counselors. And then the one thing, I've already mentioned this, but I can't mention it enough, don't be afraid to ask for help. Especially if you're planning on entering into an open curriculum, you do have to be a good advocate for yourself. And there's nothing wrong with not getting something on the first try, but knowing that you do have that support, go out and seek that support when you need it.
Sage advice there. We often learn more by our mistakes than by what we're getting right. Alexandra, what advice would you give?
I think the advice I would give is to form strong study habits now. I mean, you all are very smart students, and I feel like in high school, sometimes it's possible just to kind of like coast on your intellect. That's a lot harder in college. Like the work is going to be more intense. You're going to need to think about strategies to study instead of just like absorbing it. And so if you haven't before, if you have, then you have a head start. But if you haven't before, I would really look into strategies, best practices for note-taking, best practices for review, like ways in which you can prepare yourself to go into college and not be super overwhelmed, because it will be a lot for many of you compared to high school.
I feel like my colleagues have stolen my notes on all these topics here, but truly keep an open mind as you go through it. College is about exploration. You are going to have high points, you are going to have low points, as long as you keep an open mind and know that it's all about supporting each other as you go through this. You don't have to go through this process alone, and you have many folks who are out there cheering you on.
Seen a couple of questions here that I'll tie together for us, folks who are interested in pre-med, but I will add also just other careers, any pre-track kind of offerings at your schools. If you could let us know what you do offer for those who might be interested in things like medicine or engineering or law. And Sebastian, you can go ahead and kick us off.
Sure. I mean, we offer pre-professional advising in all of those areas. I think the best part about being an open curriculum school is that even though there's not official pathways for all of those areas, there's still so many great opportunities to take courses that are going to set you up for success in medical school or in law school or in business school, et cetera, et cetera. But you still have so much opportunity to explore outside of those areas. I think back to my own experiences at my alma mater, and there were not many pre-med students that had time to take courses outside of the science disciplines. Yet at Wesleyan, it's very frequent that we'll see students who are interested in pre-med areas deeply passionate about other areas on campus. So I think when medical schools are talking more and more about effective bedside manner, I think Wesleyan alumni are set up really well for success in those pre-professional tracks, especially medicine.
Fred Smith.
Yeah, so logistically speaking, we have pre-health professions advising. So if you're thinking about what courses do I need to take, like the logistics of it all, we have people that will help you in addition to your major advisor. Because many pre-med students at Smith aren't bio majors or chemistry majors. They might be an art history major or a government major and still fulfill those prerequisites for med school and have that broad worldview. We do also, have advising for pre-law. We have an engineering major, which sets students up for success pretty much right out of college if they're interested. But I think pre-health can be a tricky one because students are thinking about how to balance those courses. And at an open curriculum school, it gives you so much flexibility to do that.
Yeah, very similar at Brown in terms of advising resources for pre-med, pre-law, pre-business. And yeah, it's not unusual to see a pre-med student concentrating in English at Brown. So again, we want you to learn as broadly as possible. For engineering, we have the oldest engineering program in the Ivy League, and it's the third oldest civilian engineering program in the United States. And engineering, I want to say, is our second most popular concentration at Brown.
I do see just a couple of questions here around what it's like to be in the classes, things around individual work versus group work. Maybe one of you speak to, the sort of balance between individual work and group work and classes offered at your school.
I think it depends on the structure of the class. Each one, I think there are some classes where the person teaching the class will really want the students to work together towards certain goals and on certain projects. But I think the nature of some classes may require more solo work. So I think it depends on the way each class is structured.
Sandra, Sebastian, anything to add to that? Great. I think as we're nearing our time here towards the end, I'd love for you to each kind of go around the room and sort of say a little bit about what type of student would really thrive at your schools, and feel free to paint us the picture of that student that would really thrive at your institution. And Alexandra, we could start with you.
This is a great question. I feel like Smithies are very curious. I think my colleagues will probably say that about their students as well. I think any student who's seeking out an open curriculum really wants to explore new things, is more open-minded. But I also think Smithies specifically tend to be really passionate about making the world a better place, very social justice oriented. And there's a lot of different ways, you can make the world a better place, whether that's through the hard sciences, inventing new things, whether that's through pursuing public policy or advocacy work, whether that's making really amazing fine arts. But I feel like no matter what avenue they choose, they're very passionate about social justice. And you can really see that come through in the kind of community that we've built here.
Sebastian?
Man, still in the Smithies and Wesleyan students, very similar bodies. I see it all the time when comparing my wife to some of the students at Wesleyan. But I think Wesleyan students are really open-minded. They're really curious. They do want to make the world a better place, but they also don't fit cleanly into a box. That's something I really want to emphasize. So you'll see someone like Lin-Manuel Miranda, who is a Wesleyan alum, for those of you familiar with In the Heights and Hamilton, great pieces of art there. Lynn was deeply passionate about the arts at Wesleyan, but he was also passionate about social justice at Wesleyan. You'll see someone who's a football player, also active in the theater scene on campus. You'll see someone who's passionate about dance also in a research lab. You'll see someone in the outdoors organization on campus also in an affinity space. And those those very different things come together to make a Wesleyan student body, and you don't see the clickiness that you see at many other colleges and universities.
When someone asks to describe the typical Brown student, I just say, when you have met a Brown student, you have met one Brown student. They are really unique individuals, and there's a real culture of questioning and kindness on campus at Brown. Like my colleagues, I will say Brown students do share some similar qualities: intellectual curiosity, open-mindedness, kindness. They're really good advocates for themselves, and they care about one or many things. And they don't just talk about making a difference, they actually work toward making a difference. And I think that when you have 7,000 undergrads on campus who embody all of those qualities, and they also all happen to be really smart, it makes for a really special environment up on College Hill.
Well, thank you for obviously answering that question. I hear a lot of similarities, a lot of intellectual curiosity, wanting to ask questions, wanting to help others, wanting to make change in the world. So it's nice to hear also some of the differences between the three institutions. I want to thank everyone on the panel here today for joining us, for making time out of your schedule to be here with us this hour. I'd also love if we can open up the chat now and just help me thank our panelists who have made the time to be here and who have provided such wonderful insights on their individual institutions. As we're thanking our panelists, I do want to just plug that if you want to continue learning more about all 50 of the college partners, or those who partner with QuestBridge, including those here with us today, I encourage you to visit our website, where you can learn more and read more specifically about each institution, as well as any of their application requirements that might be coming down the pike later on this fall. And we'll actually go ahead and drop this link in the chat for you to see where all of our partners are located on our website. But you can also join us next week. So as I mentioned at the start, that this is the second of a 3-part webinar series. Our third webinar for Meet Our Colleges will be next week, and we'll have 3 completely different schools that talk a little bit more about something we got into today, actually, these cross-campus consortiums or partnerships, which are these moments where schools partner with other schools to be able to offer coursework or sometimes degree programs to students. So I do hope that you will join us next week for our third piece, and we will go ahead and drop that link in the chat as well. If you haven't yet registered, we encourage you to do so. But again, thank you so much for making time. Alexandra, Matthew, Sebastian, it's been a pleasure to be here with you today. And I assume that if students have additional questions, I know we didn't get through them in the chat, that they can go ahead and contact your institutions. And if you want to drop that information in the chat here for us today, I'll go ahead and keep it open for a little bit, so you can go ahead and do so.